I just kept on getting notifications that another soldier committed suicide. Another soldier committed suicide. It got to the point where I'm like, Jesus, I couldn't take it anymore. Facebook was in its infancy kind of, and it was like an obituary. Kind of did a self-inventory of myself and like, well, fuck, why are these guys killing themselves? And I'm not.
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors and ideators so that we can hear their stories. Every year around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives, and we almost never talk about it. We certainly don't talk about it enough. And when we do talk about it, many of us, most of us, we're not very good at it. So one of my goals with this podcast is to have more conversations and hopefully better conversations. In large part to help more people in more places hopefully feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. Now, if you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. Our email is hello@suicidenoted.com and I would love to talk with you. You can check the show notes to learn more about this podcast, including the Noted Network podcast training, as well as our membership. And special thanks to Shell, one of our new members. Thanks, Shell. There are a couple of new links in there as well. One is to a rebranded YouTube channel where I will be having live streamed conversations on or about suicide. We got to talk more about this. More people, more conversations. If you are interested in talking with me on a live stream, I know that's not for everybody, but that's how we're doing it for now. In addition, of course, to the podcast, have a look at that Google form. There's some other information on that form as well, but just fill out whatever applies to you. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, rating and or reviewing the Suicide Noted podcast helps people find it. Of course, we want more people to find it. If you listen on Spotify, check out the polls each week. You can also leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your ideas. Please keep in mind that we are talking about suicide on this podcast, and my guests and I don't typically hold back. So take that into account before you listen or as you listen. But I do hope you listen because there's so much to learn. Today, I am talking with Elijah. Elijah lives in Florida, and he is a suicide attempt survivor. Elijah in Florida. Here we are again. What's up?
How you doing, brother?
I want to let the audience know, our listeners know, that we had a very good and very long conversation, I don't know, a couple weeks back. And we're talking again, and it's all on me because I was listening to our conversation, loved every minute of it. Absolute beast to edit, which is is part of this gig. So We're back at it. The audience might hear me reference things here and there that we originally talked about. I am in North Carolina. You are Florida, right?
Yeah, I'm in South Florida. Originally born and raised in Southern California in Los Angeles, and grew up in the 80s and 90s. Moved out here a few years after I got out of the military. In 2012 was when I moved to South Florida, and I'm in Broward County now. And I've been here ever since.
All right, so sunshine guy, Southern California, Southern Florida, sunshine guy. Not the memoir title, but not the worst.
Not the worst, yeah.
How did Elijah in Florida, originally from California, stumble upon a podcast called Suicide Noted, where essentially the only thing we do is talk about suicide and the people's lives around all of that, what led them to it, what it was like, their life since, how they are now. You know, you're in a small percentage of people who would look for something like that. So tell me how you found it and why you wanted to talk.
I've always been, battling with depression. I was diagnosed very young with depression, extreme depression disorder, and anxiety. So it's something that I've lived with. And it's a roller coaster. It comes and it goes. It ebbs and flows like anything. I'm a journeyman welder by trade. So I'm a tradesman. I'm in an environment where I can listen to podcasts while I work all day. So I grabbed my phone and I typed in on the Apple search just suicide. And yours is the first one that came up. And I immediately connected with just your way of speaking and the person that you were interviewing, how open and raw it was. And it was something that I'd never heard or come across before. So it was very intriguing to me. And I listened to
Mhm.
another one, listened to another one. The more I listened, the more I connected with a lot of your guests that you've had on. I realized that there is a safe space where we can talk about this and not fear, getting locked up or putting away in a mental institution or anything like that. People who have suicidal thoughts or have battled with depression, they don't have any outlet. I've been through therapy sessions before, and the therapists have asked, do you have any suicidal tendencies? And you want to be as open and transparent as possible, but in the same token, you know that they have an obligation to uphold on their end to where they don't want you to hurt yourself or someone else. So they're going to have to, there's some sort of bar that they have to meet. I guess it's very like standardized, like if you say certain words or something like that, you meet a criteria to where they have to report you to, enforcement or anything like that. So the reason why I say that is that this is a place where we can talk openly and freely. And I was just like, man, like I really would like to talk to you.
Yeah. And thanks for being here. I didn't thank you. So thanks. Part two to that question is, so you hear it and, you like it, which is, I love hearing that. Why do you want to talk about it? Not just with me, because obviously a podcast, other people who you'll likely never meet, but just like you heard others, right? When you first looked for suicide on Apple, why do you want other people to hear this conversation?
Because I think maybe though there's people out there that can relate to my story in some way or another, and I can maybe shed a little light in darkness. More importantly, let people know that, of course, you're not alone and you're not a selfish person for thinking any certain kind of way. And to think about something like suicide isn't so far fetched, for people who've been through childhood trauma or life experiences. That's just the gravity of the world that we grew up in or live in, it can be overwhelming. If I can bring some sort of comfort and, likeness to someone, then that's what I'd like to do.
I bet there's somebody who's hearing this right now who heard you say something about you're not alone. And they're like, fuck you. I'm fucking totally alone.
I think that people, especially men who think like I do, we harbor a lot of pride. It is pride actually, because we do want to carry this by ourselves. This is mine. Just to get men to talk about dark stuff, thinking about contemplating suicide, somehow translate to a sign of weakness or cowardice. So men don't like to openly talk about things like this because somehow or a way or another, either it's a societal thing or social thing, but it's demonized and it's considered something that's weak. That's something that I think that people need to understand, that you're not weak for talking about this. It actually takes a lot of strength to talk about something that's so near and dear and personal that I'm 45 years old and I've carried this my whole life. To come on a podcast and just to kind of vomit this out of my system to you and to the world to listen to, that's an act of strength and courage. To be vulnerable is a rarity. I think that you bring this rawness to the podcast arena that allows men like myself, who's been through a lot, who's rough around the edges, to create a space where we can be vulnerable and talk about shit that really matters. And I think that's important.
You see, you had 2 attempts and 2 incidents, which we can sort of say are near attempts.
Right. The first time I attempted I was 18 years old. The other time that I attempted, I was about 31.
Okay, we're going to talk about those. What about the near attempts?
Well, one of them was recent, when I was 42. There's been incidents where I'm always thinking about it, like I can just jump off this ledge or step on this train track, at the last minute. I own a lot of firearms. I've been around firearms almost my whole adult life, as a matter of fact. I was in the military for years. So I've been diagnosed with depression. So I have access to pills and prescriptions that I would let stockpile up so I'd have just enough. It would not be too hard for me to, create a way to peace out.
I want to ask you, as we talk today, are you suicidal?
Yes. I don't think that ever goes away. You could put lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig.
Hold up. Now, would you consider that to be at least part of the memoir title? Come on.
That's pretty fucking good, eh?
So here's how I imagine it. And it's going to change, right? You can put lipstick on a pig. That's like in the big print. But like the smaller print below, the sort of subtitle. But, okay, all right. I had a feeling with you from the first time we talked. There would be a lot of options for memoir titles. We have like a series of memoirs with you.
Once you come to that point of considering taking your own life, it's kind of like that never really goes away, man. Not something that someone's you wake up one day and be like, oh, I want to fucking take my own life today. It's something that conjures up. So when you have something that builds up like that, it kind of calcifies and it never really goes away. It just becomes part of your thought process. Speaking for myself, I don't think I'll ever be non-suicidal. It's like alcohol with me. I'm an alcoholic. I try not to drink because I am an alcoholic. And even if I give up alcohol completely, I'm still an alcoholic. That's still a tendency that's within me that I can't change. It's a condition. It's something that sticks with you. You come across the right circumstances and availability and accessibility, and you could fall right back into drinking and becoming that same way. I view that way as suicide as well.
You said something about how things build and then calcify. So nice little transition. I want to understand as best I can. What are the things that happen in your life that lead you to your first attempt at 18 years old?
Well, I think the big root cause of where I am as far as my mentality and my mental state and mental health always will go back to my childhood. I grew up in a cult. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. My mother became a Jehovah's Witness shortly before I was born, and she was radically transformed into this Jehovah's Witness follower. Just by proxy, we grew up in this environment which was very strict. We could only have friends that were Jehovah's Witnesses, and we didn't celebrate holidays. We still went to public school, so I don't think people understand how damaging it is. And a lot of people who escape out of that cult, they tend to commit suicide. You're raised in this cult to where you're not an individual. You're not even celebrated on the one day you're born. You're not even felt special.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's sad because it's detrimental for children growing up like that. Now I understand adults, they have a midlife crisis or whatever. They have their come to Jesus moment, and it just happened to be a Jehovah's Witness. They consume their whole life in it because of their own issues, and they drag their children into this ideology unwillingly. I'm one of four kids, and we all grew up in that. We're all 2 years apart from each other. I'm the middle child. I'm the third child born. All the things that my mother tried to shelter us from: drugs, alcohol, abuse, pornography, whatever, premarital sex, all these things we were exposed to within the Jehovah's Witness organization.
Right.
And I mean, it was bad. And it's not normal. It isn't normal. But they want to keep it hush hush and a lid on it. But that's where my trauma started from, was from members of that organization. Now, my father was not a Jehovah's Witness. He was a complete opposite. He really was not a good father at all. Never showed affection, never said, I love you, never hugged you, or never expressed any empathy. Or he lived a rock and roll lifestyle, literally lived a rock and roll lifestyle. Biker, played guitar, was in a band. He womanizer. He just was far from a Jehovah's Witness. So my mom was on the complete polar opposite. They both come from families that suffer with alcohol abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse, and suicide. And they battle depression and bipolarism. So it's like two crazy people had kids. And that was me and my siblings.
Wow. Isn't that weird? And 45 plus years later, here we are talking.
Yeah, no shit, eh?
It's like the way the world, just people's paths cross, is just fascinating, bro. So when we first talked, there were a series of incidences that happened when you were a kid or a teenager. I want to hear about them and how they led to your attempt or attempts.
Well, first of all, my memory, I don't have memories from when I was a young toddler. My memory bank starts when I was probably around 5, 6 years old. The reason why, I don't know. I thought that was normal till I spoke to other people, and they're like, yeah, I remember when I was 3 years old or 4 year old. I'm like, how the hell? I don't remember any of that shit. And this wasn't something that just manifested when in my 20s or something. I mean, I was in grade school and I was like, I don't remember that. And, it wasn't that long ago. But when I was 8 years old is when I was first had my incident with one of these childhood friends that was older than me. We had been swimming, and I was changing, and he tried to get me to take my pants off, basically. He what his intentions were, I could only imagine. I ran out and I escaped, told my mother about it. And of course, she did the complete worst thing. Obviously, she invited him and his mother to our house for like an interrogation. She wanted us to talk about it. You can imagine, I'm humiliated. I'm humiliated to talk about this in front of the person that tried to do this to me. They known me my whole life. And so it was very awkward and it was very traumatic.
Mm,
And my mother did not really consider that. At the end of it, she was kind of like, well, maybe you misunderstood. And so she kind of didn't believe me.
mm,
So at a young age, I was like, well, what the fuck, man? You're supposed to protect me. And not only do you not believe me, but I'm humiliated now. The worst part is she allowed us to keep on associating with this individual. When I was 11 years old, I had a near death experience with my older brother at Huntington Beach in California. I almost
mm.
drowned. I went under the water. We didn't have any bodyboards or surfboards. We were just kind of like body surfing. I was 11. He was 2 years older than me, and we just were exhausted. The sun was going down, so the riptide was very strong, and there was nobody out there. It was just him and I, and he's like, "We got to get out of here." So we were trying to get out. He was ahead of me, and I just kind of gave up. I'm like, you know what? It's okay. So at
Mm.
11 years old, I was already faced with death. Instead of being feared it, I kind of leaned into it more, and I kind of accepted it. I'm like, you know what? It's okay. And I even let all the air out of my body to make me sink farther down faster to, I don't know, make the process a lot faster. But I already gave up. I gave up. I was tired and I was like, okay, I'm okay with death.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, a surfer reached down and grabbed me, came out of nowhere, and he was like my guardian angel, I guess. But went back to the shore with my brother, and we kind of stood there and contemplating what had happened. And my brother was just struck with fear because he thought I was going to drown, and I was drowned. I faced that at an early age. So then at 12 years old, a classmate of mine had a heart attack. He had a heart condition and collapsed and died on the playground. It was my first real experience of someone dying. It was just like boom, boom, boom. 1 year after the other, it was just
Not only near death at the beach, but your recollection of being okay with it or accepting it. That's a big thing for a little kid. Anybody really, but like, what does that do to the brain? You wonder, right? 12 years old, you have a buddy who dies.
that affected me because I saw him die right in front of me, and it affected me in a way that probably wasn't normal. I remember we had walked back to the classroom, the ambulance came and hauled him off, and we were sitting in classroom, and the teacher come in and she talked to the other teacher, and they were crying, and they said that he had passed away, and they declared him dead on the way to the hospital. And all the students started crying, and I just looked over at his desk, and like all this stuff was still there. Like all this shit's still there.
This
Like
makes sense.
it didn't really process the way it did for me as it did the other children. I knew he just died, but it wasn't like a big deal like it should have been for me.
I want to share something with you that I've never shared on this podcast because I'm ashamed of it. And I don't do this at all to compare. It's just like how we deal with death. And you don't know how you're going to deal with it. If you listen to enough episodes, you'll probably know that I lost my best friend to suicide in his late 20s. I was the same age. And I was living in Japan. I was teaching English over there. And I had seen him, in the States week or two before. Get a phone call from my mother, and she says, you don't know if your memories are right. Here's what my memory tells me. I have some very bad news for you. And I didn't know right away. But then she says, it's your friend Jimmy. She tells me, I think she read it in the newspaper the day after it happened. I don't remember the details she shared, but I knew he had died. I knew he took his own life. Here's why I'm sharing that. What you would think I would do would cry, flip out, scream, hop on a flight back. Those things would all make sense. Well, what did I do? That night, before I got the call, I had plans with one of my roommates to go out to a bar. Got the call, heard what happened, hung up the phone, probably was in shock. Said, hey, I forgot his name now. Let's call him Andy. Andy, you ready to go? Leave our place. We're walking down to the subway. This is in Tokyo. I remember telling him, I don't know if he asked me a question or I sort of shared it. I just said, yeah, my mother just called me. My best friend just killed himself. Kind of like that.
Nonchalantly.
Mm-hmm. And then we went out. Now you can understand why I don't share that very often. Wow. It just reminds me, you don't know how you're going to deal with stuff.
Well, because no one ever teaches you how to, hey, when this happens, this is how you're supposed to act. It's kind of something that we all just kind of learn when it happens,
I don't even think there's a supposed to. I mean, you just do what you do.
Yeah, you do what you do. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And just like there wasn't anything, that's how I was thinking at the moment. But I was 12 years old. I was a kid. We just lost a friend that was a kid. It was like we're playing, and next thing you know, he just drops dead. It was very alarming because it was my first experience with death, and it wouldn't be my last, unfortunately. But at the time, it was from one of my peers.
Yeah.
That's not common. That doesn't happen all the time.
Nope.
So I dealt with it the way I could, I guess. Every year, it's just something progressively just got worse and worse and worse. It was just a new chapter in this crazy life that is mine. I thought it was normal, but later when, through therapy and I just kind of brushed. I'm a Gen Xer, so one of my therapists that I was in session with was kind of like, "No, you have childhood trauma," and I was like, "Well, I just things happened, And he's like, "No," he's like, "You need to really look at it for what it is. Like that isn't
Mm.
normal. The things that you've gone through." That these things have a profound effect on human beings, So it took me a while to realize a lot of the stuff that I went through in my life is trauma.
So this is all part of your life, and I imagine you're sharing these parts of your life because, like you said earlier, they're building. I think that was the word you used,
Mhm.
building towards
Right.
this thing. Big thing.
Oh, yeah. So at the age of 13, my dad's oldest brother committed suicide, hung himself. And on both sides of my family, there's people who have committed suicide on both sides of my family, not surprisingly. And then when I was about 14, 15 years old, I was groomed and sexually molested by a Jehovah's Witness. This guy was in his 20s. I it's in his mid 20s at the time. And I was studying to be baptized as a Jehovah's Witness because I wanted my mom to be proud of me. That's why we do. I don't know. I was studying with this individual and he was just, grooming me and, he ended up sexually molesting me. His cousin, I lost my virginity to. She was 17 and I was 15. That created a weird dynamic. My mother and father broke up for a short period of time, and me and my brother and sister, we just kind of did whatever we want. We befriended this married couple that were Jehovah's Witnesses, and they would buy us alcohol, so we'd go over there and watch Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and get drunk and spend the weekend. Well, I got close with the wife, and she was 30 years old, and we ended up having an affair. And then one night, we were drinking. We had a little mini party, and that individual that had assaulted me was at that party. I just told her what he did right
Mm.
there.
Mm.
She flipped out. Everyone else was sleeping. She kicked him out. Police ended up getting involved. He went to jail. My mom came back to live with my dad because she, I don't know, I guess felt guilt or blame. So I was mad at her for that. 17 years old, still having an affair with this woman. And she said, let's run away. So we ran away. So that
What's
was my
happened?
first relationship.
Do you consider that?
Abuse?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. She was
Yeah.
an adult and I was a minor.
Yeah.
No, if it was a man, it would be no question. Yeah, that's sexual assault. The fact is that it's still assault, man. No matter which way you cut it, it takes some pretty fucked up mental choices to have sexual relationships with a teenager, let
Mhm.
alone try and have a full on let's play house, have a relationship, which we ended up doing. But she was very possessive, very jealous, very crazy, very toxic. So I ended up leaving her 17, 18. I moved in with my grandparents, got into the party scene in LA really bad, did a lot of drugs, a lot of cocaine, and then met my son's mother when I was 18. And that's when I had my first attempt. What brought it on? Nothing. I was struggling to get a job because I didn't have any experience and we didn't have any money. We were renting a room out with three other roommates. Didn't have any furniture, didn't have any food. But at that time, they had envelopes and you could put a check in there and deposit it. And I got a piece of paper and I said, I owe you $300. I wrote it down, put it in the envelope, deposited it, and then it said, would you like another transaction? Sure. Need a withdrawal. Max $300. So we got $300. We went to walked to 7-Eleven because we didn't have a car. We got beer and 7-Eleven hot dogs and walked back and watched TV and got drunk for no rhyme or reason. I just got up. I walked to the kitchen. I got a knife. I went into the hallway bathroom. I closed the door. I drew a bath. I was waiting for the water to cool down. So I'm sitting there waiting. I was frustrated because I'm trying to end my life, but the water's too hot to get in. What I was thinking at the moment, I don't know. But I just said fuck it, and I just grabbed the knife, which was a steak knife, and I just slashed my wrist really bad. And then I just plunged my wrist into the toilet. I sat down on the ground and just drooped my hand and just plopped it into the water and just started to bleed out.
You said for no rhyme or reason. And when you said that, I'm like,
No, it wasn't rhyme or reason. I was sitting there and I felt just depleted. I felt like my life had come to nothing and I wasn't meant to be anything. I was on my own. but I was miserable. I had this girl, but I was unhappy because, and she was older. She was 11 years older than me. So I felt like I'm never going to make this woman happy. I'm a low life. I don't have a job, don't even have a car. Like I just lied to the bank, basically just stole money from the bank so I can get fucking drunk. I just felt like I wasn't going to amount to anything.
All right, well, that's a rhyme and reason to me.
Yeah, I was because I was sitting there. The TV was on, but I was looking, but I wasn't watching. I was just kind of like just staring and just thinking like, what a piece of shit I am. Like I really didn't amount to nothing. And so, yes, there wasn't a rhyme or reason, but that was a rhyme and a reason. It's just depression. I just said, you know what? Okay, you're right. You're not nothing. You're not going to amount to anything.
Tell me how you didn't bleed out.
So passed out. She woke up, wondered where I was. She went to the room. I wasn't in there. So she heard the fan of the extruder in the bathroom going in the hallway bathroom. The door was locked. She got a butter knife, opened it, and saw me on the floor, passed out with my hand in the toilet, bleeding out. So she came to me immediately and she flushed the toilet because there was blood everywhere. I was bleeding out. She woke me up, put me in the bathtub because at that time it was cold. So the water was cold. So she wanted to wake me up. So she put me in the bathtub. I kind of sobered up and woke up. She grabbed the towel and wrapped around my wrist, and she's kind of just like, "Why did you do this? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?" Like she was like legit mad at me. Not in a mad, like concerned, caring, but like, what the fuck? She's like, I'm calling the cops. And I said, listen, if you call the cops, I'm never going to get a job. They're going to take me away for a couple of days or maybe a week. I'm going to get locked away and we're never going to get out of here. Don't call the cops because obviously I didn't die. I'll just stop the bleeding and I'll sleep it off. And that's what I did. I got up, went to bed, kind of bandaged myself up, and I was in bed for about 2 days.
You don't stay with her. How much longer do you stay with her?
I stay with her until I join the Army.
When do you join the Army?
When I was 20 years old.
And how long do you serve in the Army?
I was in the Army till 2000 and almost 2007. So six and a half years.
And you were deployed?
Yes, I was deployed. I had a combat tour in Iraq and I was stationed in South Korea for 16 months.
Okay.
Which isn't a combat tour, but it is considered an overseas tour.
I don't have an opportunity to speak to veterans very much. What was it like for you, that experience, particularly, and then when you come back to boring old California or Florida?
Well, Iraq was I was there in a time where it was the bloodiest. There was a lot of destruction, and you're never really prepared for war. You can train all you want, but once you're in the thick of it, you're like, well, shit. I guess this is what it's all about. It's not really dramatized and romanticized like it is in Hollywood. It's more of like, oh shit, this is real. Back then, what we did was we flew into Kuwait and then we convoyed across the border into Iraq. And where I was stationed at was in what's called the Green Zone. I was stationed to Tikrit at a Iraqi Air Force base, and so we had to drive there from Kuwait. I was a machine gunner, and so I was on a gun truck, and our first sergeant gathered us the morning of. We were leaving out, and he just wanted to talk to the gunners. He was a seasoned soldier. He said the life expectancy of gunners very low. So he's like, and I don't want to lose any gunners today. Keep your heads low. And at that time, there wasn't up armor or anything like that. So we were very exposed. So I was like, oh shit, okay. And then it took us a couple days to get to our forward operating base. And when we did, right when we crossed into the border, you knew you were in Iraq. When we got into Baghdad, we got shot at. So day one in the country, we were already getting shot at. You can't really just explain the adrenaline going through you, but that was day one. So I was like, well, okay, I guess this is what it's all about. We got to our base camp, and then we had missions throughout our deployment, and we were there for 13 months, saw a lot of shit, went through a lot of shit, and then came back. And when we came back, the psychiatrist would ask us very formulated questions. Did you fire your weapon? Do you have dreams at night? Do you have trouble sleeping at night? It was very elementary type questionnaire. And we were told, hey, just answer honestly. So we did. Next thing you know, we're getting handed pills, drugs. We didn't even know what the hell they were, but they said, take 2 of these in the morning, take this one in the afternoon, take 2 of these at night. So we come back and we start popping pills and, drinking. And, within a couple months, I had my first buddy that I knew that committed suicide. I got out of the military, and then it was just like, I just kept on getting notifications that another soldier committed suicide. It got to the point where I'm like, Jesus, I couldn't take it anymore. Facebook was in its infancy kind of, and it was like an obituary, kind of did a self inventory of myself and like, well, fuck, why are these guys killing themselves? And I'm not. Like, is there something wrong with me? This person had a wife, kids, but we're in the same shit. Maybe there's something wrong with me. It's a weird experience to go through, but everybody that got deployed, you leave a little bit of yourself there and you bring some of it back with you. It's something that you can never get rid of. And a lot of us veterans, we self-medicate. We become alcoholics and dependent on benzos and pills and all kinds of stuff, but we don't really address the root cause. And the root cause is that war isn't normal. Humans aren't designed to experience war, I don't think. Back in the early civilizations, if it was survival was dependent upon it, then yeah, of course. But your self survival, your self preservation for your tribe or whatever. But as a soldier, as a service member, you're not really there for the fucking politics and bureaucracy, and you just want to get you and your buddies home. Like that's all you really care about. You really care about getting through this mission, getting through today, making sure everybody's safe. That's it. That's all you care about. And then when you come back and you don't have that, you kind of like feel like not useless, but used, for what, man? And then a lot of my friends got deployed again, and some of them got killed. And now you look at it 20 years later and you're like, what the fuck was it for? Like nothing. All that experience, all that destruction, all that stress, all that anxiety for nothing, man. Like for nothing. It's horrible. It's a horrible feeling. You feel completely deflated. And I come back from Iraq, and then shortly after, I'm talking about not even a year later, I was out of the military. So I had to adjust, not just coming back from Iraq, but also coming back to a civilian life, and we come back from Iraq and people are arguing about gas prices and the price of fucking Lucky Charms. What the fuck, dude? What is going on? What kind of world is
Yeah.
this?
I can't imagine that, man. There's so many things you said that I could honestly just simply cannot relate to or understand and never will. But it sounds fucking brutal.
It's rough just because of the stress of being in that environment, just being in a combat zone. You're getting mortars at night, people are sending rockets over the wire and they're exploding around you. And you're like, well, shit, you get up and you go and you take shelter, but it's like, you just never know, if it's going to be your time. And then it stops. And then you're like, okay, let's just go back to bed, I guess. It's fucking weird, man. It's a very surreal thing to experience. And when I came back, I came back and my family had a party for me, and my girlfriend at the time came over and I walked her out to her car, and I was quiet, and she says, "Are you all right?" And I said, "No." She's like, "Well, what is it? What are you thinking about?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I just want to go back." And she's like, "Go back where? You want to go back inside the house? Like, what the fuck are you talking about?" I'm like, "No, like go back to Iraq." And she's just like, "Why the fuck would you say that? Why would you want to go back there?" And I'm like, "I don't know." It becomes a normality. It becomes something that you're used to living in that environment. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but at the moment, that's all I could tell is that I wanted to go back. No matter how much you train, no matter how much you base your whole career training for that moment when you're in combat or when you get deployed and you're in a war zone, you're never really prepared as you think you are. You're never, and then you're not prepared to deal with those feelings and emotions and thought process. No one teaches you how to decompress. I mean, my whole military career, I was taught how to do my job in combat, but no one ever teaches you how to deal with it after. It's kind of like, thank you for your service. Good luck dealing with what you you got to deal with. We go our whole military career preparing to do our job in wartime. When we get out, no one prepares us to handle that right,
Mhm.
especially at the time when I got out. And so that transition was extremely hard. And a lot of soldiers, Marines, sailors, and airmen didn't have any outlets. And so they would just commit suicide. It's very hard to talk about all that stuff because we're put up on a pedestal like we're heroes and it's a service and we should be proud and all this shit. But it's like we're kind of like damaged goods, man. Like no one treats you, no one invests in you like you would think. At least that's my experience.
Yeah.
But veterans do need to talk about this, man, because there's so many veterans that kill themselves because they don't have an outlet like this.
Wow. There's a lot of reasons, I would imagine. Yeah.
There's many reasons. There's many reasons. I can't speak for all veterans and people who take their lives, but I know that it's hard for veterans to speak about this because we don't want to do a disservice to our service. But I think we need to talk about
Mm. So you're back from the Middle East, out of the military. What's life like? What happens next?
I married and had two girls, and then I got a divorce, and then I remarried and raised a set of twins.
So when you were pretty young, you had your daughter, you had a child.
Right, my son, he's 24 now.
That was with the woman who found you with your hand passed out in the bath.
Right.
You go to the military, you come back, you're in your like mid 20s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You meet a woman and have two kids.
Yes. And this woman, I'll be honest with you, I was never like attracted to. We met in the army. We met in South Korea. I had an affair with her and she got out of the military from Korea and she's from Florida. When I was in Iraq, she traveled to California to go to college. And when I came back I was stationed in California. When I came back, I exited and we hooked up. You know, she'd gotten a divorce and she was going to college. And so we rekindled on the basis of we knew each other. We were in the army together and living an old life in the army vicariously with her.
And you relocate to Florida.
Right. We relocate to Florida. But before we do, we were having a lot of problems. I was a workaholic. I had a young family, babies, kids, and she would always guilt me. And so I said, okay, well, what can we do to salvage this? You know, because I have children with you, you know, you're my wife. She says, well, I want to go to Florida to be closer to my mother. I said, okay, I'll quit my job. We'll sell the house. Let's go. That was in 2012. So prior to that, her mother came down and her mother was just very toxic. We had got an argument. I came home from work and the kids were gone. They were not at the house. So I had a SUV. I had a 3-car garage. I backed it in and I closed the garage doors, rolled down all the windows, and I just was revving on the exhaust. I was just like, man, fuck this. This house that I had bought was a newer designed house. And in California, they have on the garage door, they have vents to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning. But I'm a dumbass. I didn't know that. So I was just smoking and choking myself out, basically.
But I mean, the real thing here is that you wanted to die.
No, I wanted to die. I'm never going to be happy. Never going to be happy. I decided to, asphyxiate myself, with exhaust. And she came home, the garage door opened, and I immediately rolled up the windows to my vehicle and all this smoke billowed out. And she's kind of like, what the fuck? What are you doing? And I was kind of like, I played it off. I was like, oh, I was just listening to music. I didn't know the car was still on. And my ex-mother all the time, she's looking at me like I'm an asshole. And so I'm just like, okay, well, that didn't work. So that was when I was 31.
When do you split with her or from her?
About a year after I moved here.
Okay, so that's like when you're in your early 30s.
Right.
At this point, you have 3 kids.
I have 3 kids, yeah.
Yeah. Or have you at that point in some way adjusted back to civilian life?
I did, but I was struggling with depression because I liked being a soldier. But the reason why I got out is because I was going to be away from my son. I was going to and at the time I was a single parent. I was already away from my son for 3 years. And I said, I have a son to raise. I'm not going to be like my dad. Like I'm going to raise this kid. So that's the reason why I got out, because I knew that I was going to be deployed again. B, because I might get killed and leave this kid alone. And I regretted it because I wanted to be in the military. So I was battling with depression and I just wanted everybody else to be happy.
And when do you marry the woman that would become your second wife?
So that was in 2014, 2015 is when I met my wife. She had a son that was in a care home that had a aneurysm rupture in his brain when she was in her 3rd trimester. So he was born like a vegetable, and he lived in the state until he was 19 in 2021 when he passed away. So the twins were about 9 years old, about 10 years old, 10 years old when me and their mom started dating. And I basically just raised them as my own. And they're still my kids today. They're going to be 20.
No kids with your second wife?
Yeah, we didn't have kids together, no.
You had this blended family.
Blended family, right.
And I remember from our conversation the first time that you were pretty close with her son who was in a hospital or a care home.
Yeah, we would go visit him every Sunday, spend time with him, just talk with him. He couldn't respond or open his eyes or communicate, but he knew you were there. And we would hold his hand and we'd clip his nails, clean his ears, bring him new, fresh clothes and stuff like that. It was part of our religion. Our kids were little at the time and it was just a part of our life. And then 2020 happened. We couldn't see him and he lost that connection and his body just kind of was like, just started giving out. And he had a lot of kidney stones and went to get them removed. And then his kidneys were failing and his whole body was just shutting down. So we decided to take him off life support. We spent time with him and he passed within the hour. It was very quick. And then I started going through a very dark depression. I had started drinking again. I changed my medication and I had a very bad side effect. It slipped me into a deep depression. And the doctor did warn me, if you have any side effects, stop taking it and let me know. But I'm a tough head. And I said, well, my body needs to acclimate to it. I'll get over this. And so for 26 days, I was just extremely depressed. This prescription, for some reason, gave me the urge to drink alcohol. I don't know why. And you can't mix alcohol with benzos. So I was already not doing what I was supposed to do. And one night I just drank too much and I was sitting on my porch smoking a cigar. I knew I was going to take my life. I'm like, you know what? Let's just fucking do it. Like me and my wife were arguing. She was in bed. She had no idea. And I thought that, it'll be all right. So I was sitting there and I was just mulling over the idea of it. And I said, you know what? Let me reach out. So I grabbed my little card that the VA gives you for suicide prevention. It's considered like a safe line, whatever. So you talk with a person that's out of state. So I was talking with a lady representative in Texas. I was on the phone with her for about half an hour. She's like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and send a squad out to you.
Hold up. Hold up. You said it was a safe line.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. But while talking to her, she asked if I had firearms, and it's like, I have a gun on me. I always have a gun on me. I'm like, I have a gun on me right now. And I think that was probably not the right thing to say because I did that to myself. I was just being honest, but not like I was going to use it, And so she says, okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and health and safety check, but I am going to send a car out to you. So make sure that you leave your firearm in the house. I think she just wanted me to get rid of the firearm, not have it in my possession. But the cops that came, they knew me because my ex was crazy and the cops had been in my house before and they were combat veterans, both of them. One was Army, one was Marine. And they came up to my house 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. They said, what's going on, man? Talk to us. And I did. And we all talked for about an hour and a half. And I was good because they're like my brothers, they get it. They're like, where's your wife? And I'm like, she's in bed sleeping, and they said, well, listen, we're not going to take you in because that's going to fuck you up. Oh, we know you. We know you're creative. You got a house full of guns. You got a house full of pills. We don't think you're going to take your life. I want you to go inside, go to sleep, and then a sergeant's going to come at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I said, okay. So I went in and went to sleep, and the sergeant came. He hit another veteran. He was very caring. He said, hey, man, listen. He gave me a bunch of resources, and he says, I'm gonna check on you again in 3 days. I said, okay. I told my wife, that I needed help. And then I started going to therapy. I changed my prescription. I got better, but it's depression, man. It comes and it goes. And I was in the wheelhouse of therapists in different offices, and it's just like it wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know if this is how it is for most people, but in my experience, it's very formulated and structured in a way where it's kind of like they're checking all the boxes, and it's kind of like robotic. It doesn't want me to bring anything out. It's not like this. Like your podcast is very genuine and it creates an environment where that is truly like a safe space. Whether we're still at this moment contemplating suicide or not, whether we fall through it or not, we have a place where we can vocalize just exactly how we feel and not have the fear of someone kicking our fucking front door in and coming and taking us away. That's a legitimate fear that people like me, at least, have when we're in therapy sessions, and they're trying to just make sure that you're not going to kill yourself or anything like that. And it's like, let's talk about that.
Fuck. Yeah.
I went through the wheelhouse. I was in therapy for about a year and a half. And then I said, you know what? I'm good. I'm okay with not going to therapy, but I do take medication and it does help. But that thought is always going to be there. I just felt like I never belonged. I never really belonged in this reality, in this life, in this moment. It's not my timeline. I just never felt like I belonged. And that's okay. Sometimes people just feel like they don't belong. And I felt like at a very young age. I think with the amount of people that commit suicide, I think we live in a time where it should be normalized to talk about it without the fear of repercussion. In most instances, just talking about it is the cure. Just getting it off your consciousness. I think that people, whoever's listening to this podcast that is thinking about connecting with you to get on your podcast to talk about what they've been harboring inside, if this can give them any sort of comfort to do that, to reach out to you, because this is something that you actually need to extract from your body. Like you literally need to vomit these words out of existence. There's power in speaking words. There's power in writing things down. We need this platform that you're providing, and we need a space where we can literally vocalize what we feel about suicide out of existence, out of our body, without the fear of anything coming back at us. Because I think in just talking about it can be the very cure for preventing suicide.
That is such the irony. We don't really let people talk about it completely, fully, honestly. And then that actually makes matters worse.
It does. And then people like me who don't talk about it, we end up taking our lives, and people who know our life story will be like, well, yeah, that checks out. You know, they can normalize it by saying, well, yeah, well, he's been through a lot. He's been through this, happened to him. But well, it's, you know, of course that was inevitable. No, man, like we need to fucking talk about this, because if we don't, we're going to end up taking our lives anyway. And people are just, they're going to make it normal to say like, well, yeah, he's been through this, he's been through that.
Right,
so that's usually the way the path leads to. And it's like, well, it doesn't fucking have to if you just allow us to speak.
Because a lot of people would be like, well, Elijah, I mean, you've got resources, you got the VA, you know, you seem to have, you know, financially stable. Just talk about it. I want people to understand without being, well, sometimes I want to be dramatic, but the truth is it's just really not set up to really talk honestly. If it were, that would be fucking great. I'd be like, Elijah, bro, I hope you can keep talking about it to your counselor or whoever, right?
Right.
But it's not really set up for that. And I think there's this fucked up myth. It's not that way. Like you can't just talk about it. Well, we'll talk about some of it. It's like, okay, I guess maybe talking about some of it might be better, but might not. Like you either let someone talk about it fully and completely. You have to tell me about some of that stuff, but don't mention the word suicide. Oh no, you can mention the word suicide, but like, I mean, if you're really thinking about it, nah, or at least, you know, use other language that doesn't require me to send you to a hospital or doesn't make me feel very uncomfortable. It's like, well, then you're not letting people talk about it.
They put barriers up, and then they wonder why a person is so cagey when they're talking to them. It's like, well, you put fucking roadblocks up, and then you expect me not to be cagey. You know, the irony is that, you know, if I speak certain words, it'll get me put into a padded room. And the only way to get out of that padded room is to speak certain words. It's ironic.
You unalived yourself.
Yeah, you unalived yourself. Oh man, every time I hear that.
You unalived yourself. Now let's not get political, but if that's not the most woke ass bullshit, or perhaps I should say over or hyper woke.
That is the epitome of woke language. Unalived yourself. Like what the fuck are we talking about? Unalived yourself? What, we can say that, but we can't say suicide? Yeah, it's I can be alive and be the most dead person to be around. What the fuck does that mean? You know, like I really don't get why the society we live in chooses to change vocabulary, but not address any real issues. I think we live in a very hard time, but taking someone up because they said they're contemplating suicide and locking them up in an institution and then meeting with them multiple times a day until they give you the right response to where a person can say, oh, okay, well, they're mentally sound now. They can go back into society. There's no investment. It's just you're a patient and you're number 47 and it's a success because you were contemplating suicide and now 2 weeks later, you're back in society. You're cured. It's like, what the fuck? Why? Because I just told you that, no, I'm good now.
Right. And then you just start saying, leave me alone. I'm fine.
Yeah.
But you're not fine.
You're not fine. Like, what kind of mental gymnastics do you have to do to understand the totality of what that means? How the fuck does that make sense?
Isn't it crazy?
It's bananas.
And then, of course, Elijah, you're the crazy one because, well, you're not well. Suicidal people, what do they know?
You know, I'll tell you, Sean, the most sincere and caring people are the people who at the same time contemplate suicide. And people think that it's a complete opposite, that you're selfish. But no, it's like the only reason why I'm here is because I give a fuck about everybody else but me. That's the only reason why I'm still fucking here is because I care too much about the inconvenience of hurting someone and them having to deal with my decision. It's a conundrum, man. It's really bizarre.
Elijah, true or false? No one knows we're talking.
True.
True or false? You have never been to a hospital for mental health.
True.
You've never been, but yet you talked about it as if you had been. Is that stories you heard from other people?
Oh, I've been around people, yeah, that they, yeah. I've seen people go to hospitals for just vocalizing, and I don't want to do that.
How many people know about either of your attempts?
I would say probably about 5 or 6. Obviously, the mother of my children, my ex-wife, my daughter, my youngest daughter knows, and my oldest son knows.
Keeping it real with the kids.
Got to keep it real with the kids because, unfortunately, depression, bipolarism, and all that stuff runs in both sides of my family. So it's unfortunate that my kids, they kind of unwillingly inherit that shit, and it sucks.
How many people do you have in your life to talk to completely and totally honestly?
Well, if I'm honest, I have my brother, my older brother. He's my best friend, and he's in Germany. He's in the army. So I have my brother and my recent ex-wife. She's always been a good friend, and it didn't end badly. And the reason why I reached out to you is because my father died in a motorcycle accident when I was 19 years old, and he was 45 years old, and he died on March 22nd. This last March 22nd, I'm 45. In my whole adult life, I just wanted to live one day older than him. So I could say, at least I lived one day, at least I lived longer than him. And it was a goal that I made when I was 19. I was angry that he got to exit this reality the way he did without any repercussion. He never got to apologize, never got to live with regret, never got to admit his wrong, never got to make things right with his kids. And he just got to live this party lifestyle and just fucking get killed in an accident, which he was heavily intoxicated and had drugs in his system. You lucky son of a bitch. You didn't even get to take your own life. Some poor bastard that ran into you has to live with that. And so I made it a goal to just live to March 23rd when I was 45. And so as I got closer to this age, a lot of feelings resurfaced that I had forgotten. I buried it so deep that this is all I planned for. And now this day was approaching and I don't have anything planned out after that.
Right. What next? Does this put you in a bit of a more dangerous?
Yeah. Predicament. Yeah. What do I fucking do now? Now I'm at this crossroads and March 22nd came and gone. And that night I had dinner with my 2 daughters. And after dinner, they're 15 and 19. I took 3 shots. March 22nd is also the day my stepson was born, the one that passed away in 2021. So I took a shot for him, and then I took a shot for me for beating him.
You don't mean a bullet. You mean an actual, like alcohol.
Yes. Alcohol.
Because if you took 3 shots and you're alive, you're not good. You don't know what you're doing with guns.
No, alcohol. Yeah, alcohol. And my daughters know that I don't drink. So they're like, hey, what's going on? I explained it to them why I took that 3rd shot. And I told them exactly transparently as I told you that I just wanted to go live one day past my dad, and that I was happy that I was spending it with them, but it meant a lot to me. March 22nd is also the day I got out of the army. So March 22nd is a very profound date for me personally. They're happy to hear, me just being honest, but I talked to them about suicide. I told them now where I was, and what I've been through. Now I'm here, and it's kind of like, well, fuck.
Perfect time to ask you the pink and purple pill question, my friend.
Nice.
I give Elijah a pink and purple pill. If he takes it, he goes to sleep. You die. You're unalived. And if you want, I can add this too. Like, no one knows it's a suicide. It's up to you. What would you do with the pill?
I'd take it.
Today.
If you ask an honest question, you should get an honest answer. And I think that's what drives people to this podcast, to you. We want to have that ability to say, you know what? If I had that pink and purple pill and you presented it to me and I could take it right now and go to sleep and it would be painless and people wouldn't know it was a suicide, I just leave this reality. Yeah, I'd take it. I would take it because I'm okay. I'm okay. My kids they're grown. They're their own individuals, and it would hurt. It would sting at certain times of maybe a wedding or a childbirth or a graduation or, an accomplishment, and that you want your parent to be there. I get it. I understand. I became a father at 20 years old, and I didn't have a father. Both of my parents are gone. I did okay. And that's the number one reason why people would stick around is because of their children. I think our children want us to be happy. and have peace and rest. The gravity of the world, it just becomes so heavy and it's tiring. Getting up and putting on the mask, going to work. And I'm very much so an extrovert, and I'm a people pleaser. I'm a Capricorn. So I want to please people, and I put on this mask, and it's just so fucking tiring, man. It's a charade, and I just live day by day. That's it. I don't have some long-term goals of, in 5 years, I want to do this and be this place. Fuck no. I just want to make it through today, man.
Me too. You be around for your 46th birthday?
I don't know.
What one thing helps the most to help you feel a little less shitty or a little less alone?
Well, besides listening to this podcast, I escape in music, and that's it. My kids, good sex. That ain't bad either.
Several myths or misconceptions have sort of come up. Are there any we didn't cover that you think are really important?
Well, obviously the one that people say is it's selfish. That's obviously the front runner in the bullshit category of thoughts. The other one is that therapy will help. I think that's a very big misconception. A lot of people that commit suicide have gone to many, many therapy sessions. So I don't think that's a do all, a one size fits all. So I think that's a big misconception is that will always work. And the other one is that if you commit suicide, you'll go to hell. I think that's bullshit. I think we're in hell, man.
What about the military? Any misconceptions around that?
Being in the military is a sacrifice in itself. Civilians don't realize it. When you join the military, active duty, it becomes a military lifestyle, and it's completely separate from the civilian lifestyle. And when you become part of that society and you have a service of years, or if you retire, it's hard to acclimate back into a regular civilian society. That's a struggle in itself. For combat veterans, unfortunately, we carry those wounds, those scars that aren't seen. It's hard to deal with that at times. And it comes in waves, it ebbs and flows. Maybe you hear a song that reminds you of something, or see a movie scene that reminds you of something that you experienced, and it triggers something within you. And it's something that unfortunately we were never taught in the military how to cope with.
Mm-hmm.
We were taught to be war fighters, but not how to be war healers. To all my service members that are out there that are in the struggle, be strong, talk about it. Find those avenues of a safe space where you can talk about it. Because when you're in the military and you do talk about it, you will exit the military very quickly. So there isn't really a safe space to talk about it in the military.
Mm-hmm.
But come on Sean's podcast.
This was not the goal of the question.
But I mean, be anonymous. Obviously,
Yeah,
writing, journaling is a good outlet. Be strong. I know at times, especially as combat veterans, we feel that we were just, pawns in a big game. We carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, unfortunately, at times. And we feel that the service we did was for no damn good. We lost friends. We lost brothers. We lost sisters. We lost time. We lost our youth. We lost our innocence. We lost a lot. And we gained nothing but trauma and fucking ribbons. But I love the military. I love my military members. My son is active duty military. My brother is active duty military. I come from a line of military service members. We served in every combat since World War II. It is a sense of pride and honor that I serve my country, and my son serves, and I've never made him. He was his own choice. He joined when he was 21. So I do respect my military members, and I understand how hard it is. And a lot of civilians will never understand that. And that's okay. I think a lot of service members get mad at civilians like, well, you don't fucking get it. You don't know what it's like. And yeah, no shit, because they're civilians. Service members are hard on civilians when they exit the military. But I know that for a fact they're more harder on themselves. I don't know. Just try and think of creative ways to get out of that space, but don't drink your problems away or self-medicate. But who am I to judge? I'm not judging anyone. But I mean, I do love my service members. I think we need to speak out more. I think we need to be real, especially us men. I think we need to just stop being so fucking prideful and just lay down ourselves and allow ourselves to be vulnerable to say, you know what, it's okay to be not okay. Like, I'm not okay.
If you are benefiting from being alpha for a while, then, you can just turn that off. I think the military attracts alphas. Then it makes sense to be alpha when you're fucking fighting and shit.
Oh, exactly. No, I think Sean, that what you're doing is amazing work, man. And I don't think you understand the gravity of it because you're in your chair, but as a spectator, someone who doesn't come in and give an interview, and someone who just listens to you and listens to I've listened to every podcast. Every one of your podcasts I've done, I've listened to. And I think the majority of the people listening have done that. They just binge listen to all your podcasts. I mean, I know I don't see a Suicide Noted Sean billboards when I'm driving down the street.
No.
So like we are reaching out to you to talk.
Billboard's a good idea, though.
It's a damn good idea.
Give me direct mail and a billboard. It would get taken down.
I know, but shit. What the fuck, man? I told you last podcast what I think we live in a prison planet.
And I think we have a memoir title.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah, absolutely. We live in a prison planet, man. They want you to stay in this prison, man. They don't want to talk about you exiting it on your own free will and accord. Fuck no.
Should I do a poll where I ask the audience if I should change the name of Suicide Noted Podcast to the Unalive Podcast?
Oh, don't you fucking dare. I will unsubscribe.
Yeah. You have nothing to worry about. I'd like to believe I live with my own version of integrity. I don't always pull it off, but this is one of the few things that I'm telling you, man, I will not waver. Anyway, enough about me. You think you'll share this episode with anyone in your life when it comes out?
I am going to tell people about this interview. For sure going to tell my brother. And I think I'll share it with my kids. It's good that they know exactly who I am and where my headspace is at. Maybe that could answer some questions that they have. Say if I do take my own life, this is out there. This, in essence, would literally become a suicide note.
Isn't that interesting?
So, I mean, it's profound.
Indeed, Elijah. I want to thank you very much for speaking with me today, man. I appreciate it. I hope the rest of your day is decent.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for your time, for being there, your cause, everything, man. I appreciate you, and I know that all of your listeners do too.
All right, bro. Ciao.
Thank you, brother.
As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support. And special thanks to Elijah in Florida. Thanks, Elijah. If you are a suicide attempt survivor or ideator and you'd like to talk, please reach out. Our email is hello@suicidenoted.com. I'd love to talk with you. Check the show notes to learn more about this podcast, including our membership, the Noted Network podcast training, and all kinds of other cool shit. However you are involved, however you support, I really appreciate it. Thank you. And that is all for episode number 263. Stay strong. Do the best you can. I'll talk to you soon.